Welcome to everyone that's joining us through the recording, and thanks to everyone who's here live. I think we can jump in and people can kind of trickle in as we get started, but we have lots of exciting stuff to share with everyone today, so let's dive in. We're really excited to introduce a new feature in the Growth Networks that we think is really going to resonate with a lot of you, the population groups. And I'm very excited to get to introduce Lindsay and Rebecca, my fellow ambassadors for the population groups, who you will get to meet today. And they'll introduce themselves, and we'll have some chance for breakout rooms at the end. I'm already getting ahead of myself. So here's a little agenda for what we're going to dive into today. And we really want this to be a casual conversational type call. So if you have any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat at any time or come off mute, raise your hand. We want this to be as useful for you as possible. So what we're going to cover today is we'll do a brief intro to Root in Nature. You'll hear from Alexis. And then also an introduction to how these population groups came about and what our goals are for these groups and our vision for those. Then we will meet the ambassadors, hear a little bit about their therapeutic horticulture journeys and experiences with these populations that they bring to the group. And then we're going to do a little tour of the Growth Network where I will show you how to access the population groups and forums in the Growth Network. And we're also going to look at a couple activities to give you a little taste for what some of these discussions might be like. So we're going to look at a couple activities and how we might weave in some considerations and adaptations and thoughts for our specific populations for these activities. And then we will close with some breakout rooms at the end, and those will be fun if you want to hop around from room to room. If you're interested in different population groups, you can meet the different ambassadors, introduce yourself, and get to know some other folks who are working with similar populations. And then finally, we will end with some closing reminders and reflections and how to get involved and what's next with these groups. All right, so I'm going to pass it over to Alexis now to just chat a little bit about Root in Nature for those of you who may be new and this may be your first call with us.
Thank you, Katie. I think we have a lot of familiar faces, a lot of Growth Network members here, so I won't take too much time. But for those of you who are new to us, Root in Nature is an organization that strengthens human health by connecting people with plants and nature through therapeutic horticulture. And primarily, we're here to support practitioners. So we have a suite of online courses. We have foundational therapeutic horticulture courses, but also mini courses to support your practice just in certain skills that you might want to enhance. We always try to think about what we can do for growth members to, increase the value for you, to support you better. And last year we thought that there was a bit of a hole in networking and like being able to just come together live. And that's really what I feel a lot of people in this field want is connection with other people who are doing the same practice. And so we wanted to connect you with people who have similar challenges and similar, successes and maybe can learn, from each other. And so we thought it made sense to have population groups where you could, work, collaborate on, the populations that you're working with. So that's kind of how the population groups were born, and I'll let Katie tell you more about, what they are, and they are open now to join. So if you go into the Growth Network, you can sign up for these groups and join the groups, and we have a call coming up on the 30th, our first one. So back to you, Katie. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexis. So our three population groups here are children and youth, which is led by Rebecca, and then we have adults led by Lindsay, and then older adults will be led by me. And I just wanted to pause for a second to acknowledge that many subpopulations will exist within these populations that we're talking about and how those intersect. So I know for me personally, with the older adults population group, I look forward to having conversations about older adults who may, also be socially isolated, or are also caregivers. Or for me personally, I've started working recently with older adults who are also English language learners. So lots of chances to discuss populations within our populations and really have some nuanced conversations and sharing best practices and problem solving. So a really unique opportunity for all of us. So each group will be led by one of our ambassadors. And how you can participate is our quarterly group calls, which I will show you how to access those in the Growth Network shortly. And those calls will be quarterly. And then we also have group forums, which is a place to engage at any time. So if you just have a question you'd like to ask the group, do you have any tools or recommendations for this activity? Or perhaps you want to share a story or share a resource, that will be the space to do that. So you can post anytime, you can respond, you can connect, and I will show you, like I said, shortly how to join those groups and stay connected that way. All right, so I'm going to introduce myself first, since I'm one of the ambassadors and also the host here today. I'm wearing many hats, as we tend to do in therapeutic horticulture. So my name is Katie McGillivray, and I am a registered horticultural therapist. I have been working with older adults for about the last 10 years. And I would say what drew me to therapeutic horticulture initially was just growing up surrounded by a lot of gardeners. My earliest memory of the garden is pulling carrots out of the ground with my grandma and just having so many moments of peace and connection in the garden that definitely inspired me at a young age. And then as I got older, I knew that I wanted to work in some type of helping profession, and discovering the model of horticultural therapy was such an aha moment of seeing, it's not just about the therapist and the client relationship as it can be in other therapeutic approaches. So having the element of the plants and the garden as part of the process resonates deeply with me. And I find horticultural therapy is just so empowering. And then going back to that link of knowing how it has helped me personally so much. I know we have so much evidence-based research that shows the benefits of it, but like experiencing those benefits firsthand is very powerful too. With this population, I worked for BC Housing for several years, managing a provincial therapeutic horticulture and food security program throughout the province. And in that role, I worked with participants of all ages, often intergenerational groups, but a large portion of my work was with older adult communities. And since then, I have worked in my own private practice in various different settings with older adults, including long-term care, assisted living, complex care, and in the community, both in person and virtually, with organizations such as Amica and Van Dusen Gardens, Providence Health, Earthwise Society, and Farmers on 57th. And something that I really love about working with population of older adults is just all the knowledge that they have to share. Sometimes gardeners that I work with will have, 70, 80 years of gardening experience under their belts, and the wisdom that they have to share is just incredible. And I really do feel like it is a privilege to get to work with this population. And with that, I would say my approach is very client-centered and strengths-based. So one of the things I find really rewarding is when participants will take on active participation roles within the group, whether it's something as small as, sharing some tips about growing orchids, to something as big as helping co-lead a session with me on a topic they're passionate about. In terms of how I hope to run the population group for older adults, I would say I would really like it to be led and informed by the needs and goals of the group members. So super collaborative, lots of feedback, and just seeing how things go and what would be most useful for people. One of the things that I am thinking I will likely prioritize is just having lots of really practical takeaways. I know we're all really busy and dedicating time to things. We really want something tangible we can take away. So practical and reflective, and just lots of moments for sharing whatever we need to share. Whew, okay, I need to take a breath now, and I am going to pass it over to Alexis to launch a poll, I believe. Oh, actually, sorry. First, we're going to do a chat question. So I've talked about some reasons why I think these groups are going to be really important for us and as professionals, as well as also improving our outcomes with clients. But I'm curious to hear if anyone has any thoughts on, for you personally, what drew you to coming today, and how might you think these groups and opportunities like this, why are they important to us in therapeutic horticulture? And I'll give everyone just a minute to put things in the chat, and feel free to reflect on that and kind of let your thoughts percolate as we go through the group. I was just catching up on the chat a minute ago, and I saw that Liz, you're joining from Australia. Thank you so much for being here, and I'm glad you could make a live event. That's very exciting. Support, sharing challenges and successes. Thanks, Trisha. Definitely agree with you on that. Yeah, I think it's such a great opportunity to not only connect with our peers, but in such a specific way that we really can't have conversations with people who may not understand the work we're doing. Okay, I'll let other people trickle in with any other thoughts they have. Oh, I see Lori says, I think these populations are looking for more grounding opportunities for healing. Absolutely. Great thoughts, and we would love to hear from you. And as I've said, feedback is so important. We want these groups to be as useful as possible for you. So any ideas throughout the chat, feel free to jump in there. I'm gonna switch gears now to a poll. So this should pop up in a minute. Alexis is gonna launch that. What populations are you currently working with or most interested in working with? And you can select more than one. You can select as many as you would like. So that should have popped up on your screen now. And I see some answers coming in. Interesting. Okay, so far it is pretty consistent between all of the groups. I'll give everyone another minute to answer, and then I can share these results with you. Looks like everyone has answered now. Okay, I'm going to end that and share results. So this is good news for you, Rebecca. There's lots of children and youth, people interested in those populations, and lots of adults, Lindsay, and older adults, and love to see the intergenerational groups and mixed populations as well. That's something like I said, we'll look forward to chatting about.
I put that there for you, Katie.
Thank you. Okay, we got one more poll for you here. What draws you most to population specific groups? And you can select a few here. Select your top 2 to 3, we said, out of the options here. And if you have any other reasons, feel free to put them in the chat if it's not listed here.
Katie, I should really use speaking notes because I wanted to mention that a key part of launching the population groups was finding 3 fabulous leaders with experience in this field. So I want to thank you and Lindsay and Rebecca for stepping up and becoming an ambassador for these population groups. So there you go. I'm going to take the moment of silence to throw that in.
Thank you, Alexis. Yes, it is a dream team. It's a really great group. Okay, I think most people are in now, so I'm going to end the poll and share results with everyone. Okay, so some of the priorities for sure are gaining practical strategies for engagement and participation. What else? Adapting activities, definitely. learning new activities. So it sounds like everyone is interested in most of these components. So that's great to see, and this will definitely help us inform, how these first group calls go. So thank you, and please, as I said, feel free to add any other thoughts you may have in the group. Okay, so I think that wraps up our intro, and I'm going to pass it over now to Rebecca to introduce herself. And yeah, thank you, Rebecca.
Thanks, Katie. Hi, everyone. My name is Rebecca, and I like to call myself the accidental horticultural therapist. My story begins in a really, really dark time in my life. I experienced postpartum depression quite severely with all of my children. And at one point, so 7 years ago, I kind of, I mean, at the time I thought it was a fluke. Now I know it was what was supposed to happen, but I purchased a cut flower kit from someone I saw on Instagram and planted those, put it in the ground, pruned them, and I started making bouquets for my neighbors. And this was a time in my life where I was just miserable all the time. And I still remember where I was in my garden with my snips when I realized that I wasn't miserable. And I couldn't remember the last time I hadn't been miserable. And the way my brain works, then I needed to figure out why, which led me to The Well-Gardened Mind. If you have not read that book, it is absolutely fabulous. That is where I discovered the words horticultural therapy and where I realized that there's actually a governing authority in all of this. And and so I immediately started working on educating myself in this. And at first I was working with, or not even working with, just sharing this with other moms who I knew were struggling in their mental health, teenagers. It was during COVID, and so there was a lot of anxiety for teenagers who were going into first exams and last exams, and everything was different. Um, and then when I started working towards my registration as a horticultural therapist, I realized that I would need more hours than I could get privately. Um, and looked for a place with structure that also had many opportunities. And so I went to a local private school here and I said, I need at least 500 volunteer hours in order to apply for my HTR, and I would like to do them here. And explained how horticultural therapy aligns with their vision for the school, which is vibrant and dynamic learning. And now, 3 years later, I have a permanent position here at the school. And so I work mostly with kids JK to grade 12. A lot of that is elementary school, but I do have a few garden clubs in the high school as well. And I just absolutely love the wonder and awe in every age. Teenagers can sometimes pretend they're too good for this or they're too cool, but it's really, really fun to see them get excited about things. And so I think that the kids that are in school now, many of them spent a significant part of their learning online. It was a very difficult time during the pandemic, and so that has led to a lot of issues in education. And so one of the things that I do here is I work with sensory aversion. A lot of children during the pandemic didn't touch anything they didn't want to. They didn't do anything scary, right? Their parents were trying to protect them. It was well-meaning, but in keeping them quote unquote safe, they forgot to expose them to uncomfortable things, which is a part of healthy childhood development. And so what that I do, a lot of my work is with that. Hey, let's do something that's going to make you uncomfortable. Another thing is lengthening attention spans in the world of social media and online gaming. If it doesn't grab kids' attention right away, it's harder to get them keep their attention long term. And so a lot of my work is in that. One of my favorite things that I love to do is I go into a class and let's say we're planting seeds. And it is so interesting to me how in a class of 25 or 30 students, when I walk in, everybody's talking and they're all excited about this activity, right? But by the end of the activity, you can usually be the only one talking. And I think that that is just such a cool experience. There's so much data to back that up. It's been really interesting for the teachers to realize this as well, that these things are calming. And a lot of my work this year has actually been with teachers, giving them tools to engage in nature in a way that's going to benefit their students. And so it's just so fun to see a teacher, kind of be like, I don't know about this. There's going to be dirt in my classroom, and then they're signing up for the next workshop that I do. So it's been a very well-rounded experience for me. But I think my favorite class this year might be JK. They are just so fun and so excited to try new things. And it's just a joy, really. I really love what I do. Let me see here. Was there anything else? Oh, my forums. I did write notes. JK is junior kindergarten. So we have junior kindergarten, which is 4-year-olds, senior kindergarten, which is 5-year-olds, and then we have grades 1 to 12 as well in this building. So in the forums, I love the idea of sharing activities. I love the idea, especially of seasonal activities. I do not love winter. I do not love being cold. My family is all from South America, so living in Canada can be a struggle sometimes. But studying under Mitchell Houston showed me how you can incorporate nature in every season. And it becomes a cycle. So we gather things in the fall to create with in the winter, and then we plant in the spring and we enjoy all summer long. And so I love that there are things we can do in January as well as July, and especially in education, I don't get access to the students in July and August. So I will definitely be sharing seasonal sorts of things and looking forward to hearing from you. And I love a good brainstorm session. I love the idea of coming with challenges and supporting one another and giving ideas for how we can tackle those challenges. As far as like experience goes, I am relatively new. I'm only 7 years into this journey, but I feel like I've learned a lot, and I'm really excited to learn from you guys as well. I think that's all I've got. Katie, how'd I do?
So well, thank you, Rebecca. That was lovely to hear about your incredible journey. And I love hearing how you like advocated for yourself, creating these positions. And yeah, thank you for sharing your story about how you got involved with therapeutic horticulture.
You're so welcome.
All right, Lindsay, you're up next. And Lindsay is going to introduce herself and then also share with us an activity example and how Lindsay would adapt that with some considerations for the population of adults. And then after that, we'll dive into a few other activities and have a discussion about that. So over to you, Lindsay.
Sure. Thanks, Katie. So as you'll find, if you join in my adult population group, I don't like talking about myself. So my bio is a little bit reflective. I ran a landscaping business in rural Alberta for a long time, where it was like really rural Alberta. So I was Parks and Rec. So I interacted with the community through like 2 cemeteries, 3 ball fields, like private contracts. So because it was so small, I got to spend some time with the people in the community. So then I did in larger centers later, but so they'd come in the cemetery that I was working and like talk to me while they were there, or I would just observe them throughout the cemetery. Or as I was planting flowers in the community, they'd stop and talk to me as I was planting. And so I got to know them a little better through the plants and the things that I was interacting with them. And they would plant them with me as well. They would just stop and start planting. So when I'm talking rural Alberta, like there was like 40 adults in the town. Everybody knew everybody. And then there was this gentleman who was a widower, and he asked me to come prune his apple trees. So he had this little orchard of apple trees, like old apple trees. And so later, after we got them done that season, he was gushing over all the apples that came. And it was an orchard that he'd been neglecting since his wife died. So it was actually quite moving, like to see the transition in him and in his landscape. So what I discovered very quickly was that it was the impact of the work, not just the beautification. I remember them saying in the cemetery, it's like a park in here. Cemeteries aren't a great place to go, but I learned a lot in there. That it was a relationship that the people were having with the space. So as I paid closer attention to those interactions and had more conversations with them, I knew there was more that I needed to learn. So here I am, many, many years later. So the other experiences that I've had, I also worked in a school, but with the adult population, I had like just a couple quick touch points that I worked with, delivering program for groups of teachers during professional development.
You want to go? You gonna do it? You okay? Hey?
That's not me.
Hey.
So both as general wellness sessions and as a learning opportunity. And I facilitated wellness days with post-secondary education, how-to workshops for horticulture with different groups of adults, and largely recently delivering a full-time program in a women's federal prison, which is a very specific population. It's been my experience with working with adults that they're as much the sponges that the youth were. So I also worked with kindergartners right up through to aging at home, but they're mostly excited to learn and try something new, the adults. So they come with their own challenges, their own preconceived notions about what they're going to do, how it's going to look, what you know, what they don't know. And sometimes, most of the time, they know more than they think that they do. So I love working with the youth because they're so fun and open, like Rebecca was talking about. They're just amazing. But I found adults to be super interesting because they've challenged me. Yeah, they challenged me to be informed, to be present, and they've pushed me to be more adaptable. Kids are pretty pliable. They'll do whatever you tell them, but with the adults, you have to be a little bit more adaptable and be vulnerable in order to reach them because they're really looking to connect. So for the adult population and the groups, I'd love to see the population events work as a sort of roundtable to the work that we're doing in between the events. So discussing like the unique situations delivering to adults. So like what to do when a planned activity goes in a totally different direction than you planned because they come with their own set of ideas. That happens a lot. Or how to reach the young adults who are more interested in their phone than like following the guidance that you're giving them. That happened recently to me. And just how to roll with it in general. So we'll share successes, get ideas, inspiration to work with the population. And for the forums, I see me like monitoring for like hot topics that come up. And then when we meet, we'll review what came up for everyone. I'd like to have some activities from the database in our group, like there at all times with specific adaptations for working with like the variety of adult populations. Like Katie was saying, there's like so many subgroups in this population that blows your mind if you start thinking about it. And I'd like the group to offer this input as we go along. So I'll just be there for support, but it'll be a group effort. So we'll use the forum and then build on it together as a team. And like Alexis said, like this is something I desperately wanted and I needed when I first was starting out, right? Like I think when I first met Alexis, I was like, I've been looking for this for so long. So I'm really excited about it. So, and I actually recently had something pop up. So I had a friend email me and she instructs a lab group of young adults at a university. She was like, I didn't do anything like painting with this group. I want to do some painting. And she's like, here's my little idea. I want to just paint their feelings. Help me. And so I thought, oh my gosh, this is exactly what this population group is for. But instead of emailing, like we have this massive group of people that we can go to. So she was wanting to include a painting activity. And so she wanted to paint their feelings. So she had a little video. And this is a great adaptable activity for all ages, of course. It works for social emotional learning, dexterity, self-expression, etc. So anyway, so I gave her some feedback in the email. And she's not here, so she can't speak to it, but I did abstract it a little bit for this group, but this is what I'm seeing, like how it will work in the population group. So I broke it down for her into different levels. So I was like, okay, Level 1, paint your feelings using watercolors. Simple little stretch of self for the client, little video to watch, easy to facilitate with a bit of front loading, good for all populations. So then I was like, now adapt it to the adult group a bit further. So these people were like 21 to about 28. I have met them, so that's why she reached out to me. So the next level would be like, have them make their own paint. So like vegetables, herbs, like beet red, dandelion yellow, turmeric makes a beautiful paint, lots of options. So this can be extended a little bit more for like healthy food discussion as well. So you can take level 2 just a little bit further if that's the focus, let's say for like low socioeconomic group. And then I took it a little bit farther. I was like, now if you have an exceptionally receptive group of adults, maybe where you have goals of like deeper self-expression, social emotional goals, take it a step further by first exploring the language of flowers with them. So you have a group of flowers there. Roses are for love. Daisies are for new beginnings. Like you can go through it all. You can just take that stuff off of Google. You don't have to know all these things. Yeah, and then have them make paint out of the actual flower, right? So it's a watercolor, the flower that they're resonating with, maybe in the moment, maybe in general, however they want to face it. So they may turn out a bit weak, but that's okay. So it's transparent. So what? They'll have a little bit of color in it. And then that way they're like, it's been transmuted into painting with the emotion, not just representing the emotion. So it's just an example of how you can adapt it. Like one idea, one simple little idea. She's like, I just want to paint their feelings. And you can adapt it to different levels with different groups of adults. So that was a really real world example that like just came into my inbox the other day that I think this is a great platform for. So,
Thank you so much, Lindsay. And Alexis just said in the chat, we need this activity in the database, and we absolutely do. What an incredible example. Thank you for painting that picture for us. And just hearing you and Rebecca speak, my brain's just totally lighting up. All these conversations that are going to be so wonderful to have, just you talking about some of the common issues you have, which are also happening in my population too. And I'm sure Rebecca's dealing with it as well. And then also just hearing you say, you don't have to be an expert on everything. We don't have to memorize the language of flowers, front to back or anything. Just those little things. So nice to have conversations about. Thank you, Lindsay, and for sharing about your journey as well. So I'm going to switch gears now and take us into the growth network. And I'm just going to show you how to access the population group events, as well as how to access the population groups. And then we'll dive into the activity database and talk about a few other examples of activities and adaptations, and then we'll get into our breakout rooms. So can everyone see my screen okay? You're seeing the growth network pop up? Perfect. And this black line you see at the top here, in case you're wondering why that's there, that's just because I'm a admin on the website, so that won't pop up for you, but that is there. So to access the population groups, if you haven't done that yet, you're going to go to groups on the side. And Alexis, feel free to jump in if I miss anything here. I'll try to just go through it pretty quick. So this is where all of your groups will live. So if you're a part of any classes with Root in Nature, this is the same way you would have accessed your class groups. And then you'll see the groups pop up here. We have adult population group, older adult, and children. Let's go into Lindsay's group, adult population group. And if you haven't joined these groups yet, you are able to just join them yourself. You can request to join. When we're in the group here, you can see, I know Lindsay and the group have already done some posts, which is great to see. So your main feed pops up here. You can see when people join the group. You can see Lindsay started a discussion here. You can you can reply and join the conversation. If you ever want to upload anything like a resource, you can upload files and documents, photos, all of that here. If you know someone that you think might like the group, you can also send them an invite. Yeah, so those are the groups. You don't need an invite to join. You can just join it yourself. And then I'm also going to show you where the events are for our upcoming population calls. And these are just like all of our other events. If you've attended any of our special events or practitioner support calls, these all live here under the events. So you can see the first one coming up is the older adult group with me. So you can just click on that and you'll be prompted to sign up through that link there. Alexis, was I missing anything?
I was just about to jump in that when
Yeah.
you register, you can register for multiple events. So if you know you always want to go to the older adult group, Katie, if you click register here, I think you're going to see like years of calls. So you can just easily like click all the ones that you want to register for, and then it's kind of like a one-stop shop. So there you go. I want to mention that, but no, otherwise didn't miss anything. Thanks, Katie.
Okay, awesome. So I'm guessing many of you, a lot of familiar faces are here. So you're probably familiar with the activity database by now. This is just an incredible resource with all of these ready to go activities. So we're going to chat about flower arranging. So this is an activity, this is one that I love as just a simple activity. I will often do this with older adult groups, kind of near the beginning of a group if it's a new group I'm working with or a new contract. It's a way to assess and just kind of get some conversations growing and growing and do a nice lighthearted fun activity. So you can see here we have the materials and instructions step by step, all of that. But for the sake of kind of demonstrating how these population groups might work, let's go through, Rebecca, Lindsay, and let's maybe just share some ways that we might adapt this or some considerations we might have for working with our populations. And do you guys want me to dive in, or Rebecca, did you want to go first? Yeah, I'll go first. Okay. Okay, so flower arranging for working with older adults, something I always am cognizant of is really focusing on the senses and the process. So I will usually pick flowers that, may evoke memories. I also wrote down Lindsay, language of flowers, totally something that I love doing with my groups as well. In terms of making some adaptations and modifications, I would use ratchet pruners with my group as a tool if we were cutting through some thicker stemmed plants to make that easier. Or perhaps I might even pre-cut some of the stems, knowing my group and the population, providing hand over hand support where needed, maybe having a participant point where they would like their stem cut, and then I would make that cut for them or one of the volunteers. Floral frogs I've also found great for every population, but really, really wonderful with a lot of my older adult groups. We made some floral frogs out of air-dried clay the other day, actually, which was a really fun activity that will be coming to the activity database as well. And I know in our classes, and I think we have some blog posts about it, there's lots of low budget and upcycled ways to make floral frogs with onion mesh over a mason jar, using chicken wire, lots of ways to do that with folks. Another thing I would say is definitely focusing on providing lots of choices for my groups. So giving them a lot of independence and freedom to just get to be creative and play. That's something I hear all the time from my group is there's just not enough time to be creative and play as adults. So really letting people just kind of have freedom to play around and explore. And then finally, I know this is probably applicable across all of our populations, but I would say definitely being mindful of scents and knowing where I'm going for my workshop, if it is a scent-free zone, if I'm working in long-term care, and selecting my plant materials accordingly. And of course, safe materials for the population as well. Rebecca, Lindsay, feel free to jump in if there's anything you wanted to add. And if anyone has any thoughts they'd like to add from the chat, if there's any considerations you have for the populations you work with, if this is an activity you like to do, feel free to jump in.
I can speak to it, Rebecca. So I did something like this. My population is very specific, but my main focus is like low socioeconomic. So oftentimes they didn't finish high school. They didn't get to the part where you use microscopes. So I like to bring in a microscope so they can actually like take some of the flowers apart and see all the little pieces and how it's made and like flowers are beautiful, but when you look really, really close, they're amazing. So that usually just like blows their mind a little bit. And then they're able to arrange it as the activity lays out.
You've blown my mind too. Wow, thanks, Lindsay.
So with my group, again, I've got super littles and then I've got high schoolers. So for the super littles, I really try to set things up so that it's almost self-explanatory. So for this activity, whenever I make a bouquet, I have a thriller, a filler, and a spiller. And so for this activity, if I was doing primary grades, there would be a thriller table, there would be a spiller table, and there would be a filler table. And so then, depending on the age I'm working with, there would be a number. So you can take this many of this stem, this many of this stem, and this many of this stem. And the way I try to do it is make it so I have to talk as little as possible so they can just see this is the first table, second table, third table. And so that's how I would do it with my primary grades. Everything would be probably pre-cut and ready for them to just assemble while being able to give them choice. With the primary grades, you really don't want to give them too many choices because they will freeze. With my middle schoolers, I would likely take them to a flower farm. And my high schoolers too. And there would be a lot more verbal instructions. The flower farm that I work with keeps things in sections, kind of like a thriller, filler, spiller thing. And so that's really intuitive and nice as well. And for my spec ed populations, there'd be a lot of photos involved in the process. So we would have a photo of what 1 or 2 or 3 bouquets look like, and they could choose which bouquet they would like to make, and then I could direct them in that way if the idea of starting it from scratch and doing it all out of their mind is too overwhelming. I hope that's helpful.
Very helpful. I feel like I'm definitely getting some tools for my own toolkit here from this. So thank you, everyone. Let's maybe also chat just quickly about seed starting. This is a popular activity this time of year, I'm guessing, for most of us. And again, just a simple activity, but hearing different people's approaches and how they work with their populations, it's so wonderful to hear. So, Rebecca, Lindsay, anything you wanted to dive in with first? Did you want me to go first?
I can go. I use this activity for a lot of my assessing. So when I have a small group or one-on-one, this is a really great tool. If I have a large classroom, then I will hopefully have an EA or a teacher to assist as well. But we start with a large seed, like a pumpkin seed, and we plant those. And then we would plant maybe sunflower seeds, and then we would plant zinnias and then cosmos and then maybe onions. So the seeds progressively get smaller and we're able to get an idea of where the student is at. So that is the tool I use for all of my assessing, either that one or transplanting things. And then if we're dealing with sensory aversion, we actually have the students try to mix the soil before we even touch the seeds. So we will try first with our hands, with dry materials and wet materials. And if that's just really not working, then we try with gloves. I have one student that wears a face shield because he's terrified he might inhale the soil. But when he does that, he can touch the soil without gloves. And so I use this one for a lot of my assessing, and it just helps me to then group the students moving forward as well with people of their own skill level, which I think socially can be a really helpful thing.
Thank you, Rebecca. It's wonderful. I can jump in, and then if Lindsay, there's anything you want to add for adults, I would say in terms of like actual physical tools, seed dials can be great. I've had varied success. I don't know about other people. Seed dials can be helpful, even using tweezers to handle small seeds. And I actually tried seed tape, making our own seed tape for the first time last week, which is an activity that's in the database that worked really well with our group. And I will definitely be doing that again. As Rebecca said, I always start with larger seeds like nasturtiums and beans that are easier to handle and see. definitely always starting way more than I need after a session, growing some extra ones, which I'm sure is similar across probably all of our populations. And then really asking participants for tips and tricks. As I said earlier, a lot of my participants have 70+ years of gardening experience possibly. So hearing from them what their tips and tricks are is always one of my favorite parts of these types of activities.
So for the adults, I guess like all the same things, the progression of sizes and abilities and whatnot. I would just caution in my experience that everybody plants the same seed at the same time because I've come across the issue of like proprietary ownership. Like, no, the beans are mine. Like nobody can touch the beans. That's what I seeded. So yeah, just like somehow mitigate that in the future. Yeah.
Yes, very relatable, very relatable. Okay, thank you, Lindsay and Rebecca, for sharing. And I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and we are gonna dive into some breakout rooms. So as I mentioned, you'll have an opportunity to go from room to room. One of the ambassadors will be hosting each room and we'll be there to kind of moderate the conversation. Really, this is just a chance to introduce ourselves. If there's any ideas or thoughts you had from hearing these activities and our considerations, if there's anything you'd like to add, we can get into that. Okay, I'm back. I'm back. Phew. Yeah, it was a wild breakout room. I ended up upside down. Okay, well, as I said in our group, there's never enough time in breakout rooms. I think breakout room time goes faster than real life. So we're gonna just quickly do a little wrap up, but I hope that was fruitful for everyone. A little taste, a little flavor for how these groups are going to, how wonderful they're going to be. So just bear with me while I get my slides back up here, and we'll wrap up in the next couple minutes here. Okay. There we go. Okay. Everyone can see my screen okay? Oh, are you seeing each other? Or...
Yep,
no. Okay,
nope, looks good. Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay. Just one more slide here. So what is next? Our upcoming calls for our population groups are taking place in the next few months. So April 30th with me for older adults, May 28th with Rebecca for children, and June 25th with Lindsay for the adult group. And we showed you where to sign up for those in the Growth Network, and we hope to see you all there. Also wanted to just point out our other upcoming Growth Network events to mark your calendars. If you haven't seen these ones advertised yet, we have monthly practitioner support calls on May 7th and June 4th. And as Alexis mentioned, you can sign up for those in bulk as well if you want to sign up for all of them. And then we also have a special presentation on May 14th, supporting emotional resilience, addressing climate emotions through nature-based practice. So those are all under the events tab to sign up. I wanted to just pause for a moment and really thank our population group ambassadors and thank all of you for joining us today and sharing and coming together and committing to this professional development and all this wonderful stuff we're doing. Stronger together, and it's so great to grow with everyone. So leaving this slide here for a second, we'd always love to hear from you. Any ideas? Alexis's email is there, and you can always reach out in the population group events. Just one last thing. I love reflective practice, and I know we had very limited time, but I just wanted to leave you with a little prompt, and this is not anything we have to answer here in the chat, but just something for you to reflect on as we come to an end here. So what is one strength you feel you have working with your population? So I noticed everyone in the room has, really wonderful strengths they bring to their work. And it was great to hear a little bit more about that in the breakout rooms. But I would love for you to just take that into your evening, thinking about what's one strength you really have with your population you're working with and how you might be able to share that with our population groups. And I see Rebecca had a wonderful answer. I just saw pop up that I'm a forever child. Yes, that is wonderful. So thank you so much. We really hope to see you all at our population calls coming up and in the forums. Hope you have a good
you.
evening, morning, wherever you're calling in from, and we'll see you soon.